Hey folks, Shintai here, and I just wanted to make a quick video talking about something that some people have been asking me about. Some people are wondering, what's a visual novel? Why do you like them? Why does it appeal to you? Why bother, getting into it as opposed to just watching an anime or just playing a game? People have been asking me these different questions, and I think it's appropriate to make a video talking about it and to explain, to people who don't know what it is, and to give people an understanding as to why I'm into them and why it appeals to me. And hopefully by the end of this video I can recommend a few to people who think that this is something they could get into. So let's get things started. So I was watching this anime called Fate Stay Night. If you've been on my anime channel, you should know that I've done a review of both the anime series and the movie. So I was watching it and I was really enjoying it. I thought this was really good stuff. And one day I was talking to my friend Kenshiro, and he told me, hey, this is based on a visual novel. I didn't know what he meant. I didn't know what that was. I decided to look up on it, and I found out that a visual novel is basically like a PC game, except instead of actually playing a game like you would normally play a game, it's like reading a book. And this really intrigued me. I was like, I've never heard of something like this before. Why don't I give it a shot? So I downloaded Fate Stay Night, decided to give it a go. I was completely just absorbed by it. For like the next couple of weeks straight, I did nothing but read Fate Stay Night. And Fate Stay Night, apparently from what I've found out, the word count exceeds that of the Lord of the Rings trilogy combined, which to me just blew my mind, especially since I read it all. But anyways, I was just completely into this. I loved the characters, I loved the story, I loved the music, the art, even though the art, by today's standards does look a little bit dated. This was made in 2004, so that should give it a pass. And I was just completely into it. I loved it. I felt like I was experiencing something that was really unique. Or at least to me it was, because this was something that I've never really seen before. The closest I'd ever seen something like this was in Artanelico, in the Cosmosphere stages of that series. You would know what I'm talking about if you've played the game. I'm sure most people are like, what's this guy talking about? But anyways, what kind of separates a visual novel typically from like just your typical novel, aside from, the obvious things like, there's voice acting, there's, pictures and stuff, there's music, is that you can make choices. Now, the choices themselves or the mechanics behind it's very simplistic. What it basically allowed was, in Fate Stay Night in particular, after you beat the game, you just saw 1/3 of the game, basically. And when you play it again, if you make different choices, then it will lead into another 1/3 of the game. And after you beat that 1/3 of the game, you can do it one more time, and then you have all, you've seen the whole game. You basically saw 3 different timelines. And these 3 timelines were vastly different from each other. They had the same characters, and yet the stories were completely different. The characters ended up in completely different situations, just based on these, like, these small changes, basically. And it spiraled into something completely different, and that to me was really incredible. It's actually what they did with the Fate Stay Night movie, was they made it based on one of those different timelines, instead of what you would normally think they would do in a movie based on series, which is to retell the story. They told a different story. Although that movie didn't turn out very well for a couple of reasons. You can check out my review of that on my anime channel if you're interested. But besides that, this was amazing to me. And the reason it was not just because of the fact that the story was great and the characters were interesting. That's all well and good, and of course a big reason why, but also because it felt like I was experiencing something entirely new and different. The best way I can kind of describe it, it was like I was reading a novel, and it felt like I was watching an anime, all at the same time. And I think that's the best example of it. More specifically, if I was reading a choose-your-own-adventure novel. Those kinds where it says, what should the character do you know, if you think you should do this or that, you should go to that page. And instead of having to physically go to a new page, you just make a choice, and then the choice aligns for you based on the decision you made. Now in these kinds of games though, usually a lot of these choices, especially in Fate Stay Night, leads to, like if you make a wrong choice, it usually just leads you into a bad ending. So I kind of recommend reading a guide and using the guide to help you, because it is not really all that fun to like make a decision that leads you astray from the actual story and then you end up dying and you have to restart. That's not the part of the experience that I personally enjoy. Although some of those deaths in that game specifically are really gruesome and kind of entertaining in their own way. I think that's more something that's fun to do like after you finish the game, rather than having to experience it while you're playing the game. That's just me personally. Some people will think differently, but it was just something that I've never experienced before. So after that, I decided I had to check out some other ones. And I also read Tsukihime, which was created by the same people who did Fate Stay Night. And after I was done with it, I actually ended up liking it just a tinge more than Fate Stay Night, which really surprised me. It surprised me just how much I enjoyed that one. Especially since, by comparison, since it's 4 years older, it looks a lot more dated. Despite that, the story just comes through and the characters come through, despite its drawbacks technically. And just recently, they released Katawa Shoujo, which to me is also just one of the absolute best visual novels I've ever read. It was truly just awe-inspiring, especially considering how this was created by just a bunch of people who just got together and weren't doing it because they were being paid to or anything like that. They just simply did it because they wanted to make something good. Now, visual novels are obviously something that's not going to be for everyone. It's a bit of an acquired taste, I would say, because when you try to explain it to someone, they could get the wrong impression, especially since a lot of these tend to simply just be hentai, and they just are simply all about just showing you hentai. I will admit that the ones that I read and are recommending, Fate Stay Night, Tsukihime, Katawa Shoujo, they all do have some hentai in it, but the biggest difference between these and, you know, some other ones is some other ones are all about that. And while in the ones that I'm talking about, it's a very small part of the game, and it's merely just a progression of the characters, and they're not doing it out of lust, but more so because they actually care about it. And it's really not even like, except for Katawa Shoujo, and even to a certain extent, not even in that, it's not really about the love and the romance in it. It's about the grand and epic story. You know, if anyone has seen the Fate Stay Night anime would know that there are some really grand and epic battles in Fate Stay Night. You know, you have the battle between Archer and Berserker, you have the battle between, you know, Saber and Gilgamesh. Especially if you've seen Fate Zero, which takes place before Fate Stay Night, there are some really great fights in that too. So it's not just about, like, these aren't just all about, you know, the romance. It's about, you know, these really great epic tales and creativity and imagination. Specifically, the Type Moon games were primarily written by Kinoko Nasu. And, you know, and it just, all of it just comes together and it creates a unique experience. So when someone tells me, like, well, why should I bother? Like, why not just watch an anime? Why not just read a book instead? Because you're kind of getting both. It is like that, except different. And isn't it nice to experience different things? You know, I love anime, you know, I love reading books. So having both, you know, combined into one to me is really unique and it's really interesting. And it's something that I think a lot of other people can really get into if they would just give it a chance. Maybe you'll find one you didn't like it. Like, I played the Shuffle visual novel and absolutely hated it. Just completely and utterly. I saw a little bit of the anime and I completely despised it. I found that it was based on a visual novel. I thought that would be better. I hated it just as much, if not more, because I actually finished it. You know, and that's just the way it is. There's going to be bad books, bad video games, bad anime. There's bad everything in everything. And there's good things in everything too. That's just the way it is. It's best to just try to find the one that appeals to you the most. And there are tons of them. Unfortunately, since they're not really all that popular over here, not all of them may be completely translated, which is definitely a shame. But if you can find one, definitely give it a shot. You may find yourself enjoying it more than you expect. Alright, this has been Shintai, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned a little bit about visual novels, what they're all about, why I like them. And maybe you can get into them too, or see it, or maybe you had a negative opinion about them at first. Maybe now you've seen them in a different light. Maybe now you can appreciate them, or at least respect them, and not just assume that all of them are just, you know, hentai or something, or, you know, whatever. Alright, see you later, folks.